back, guys, and thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of Terrible Towel Tuesday. I am your host, SimFBallCritic, and I just remembered, guys, once I hit record, I don't even have my notes, so I'm going to try to do this off of memory. Hopefully, I remember some of the things I want to get to. Now, like it says in the title, one of the things I want to talk about is, Mike Hilton saying that he feels like the Steelers may go 7 DBs. There may be some packages where there's 7 DBs on the field. That should be interesting. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And I think I might have mentioned a little bit of this on last week's show, but I want to go into a little more detail with that. I want to talk a little bit about Jon Bostic, and I'll let you know what I'm referring to in regards to him. Talk a little bit about Antonio Brown and a little brief comments that he had today, as well as let's talk a little bit about Le'Veon Bell. All right, now, as far as Le'Veon Bell, again, man, I don't know if they're going to get a deal done or not. We're hearing all of these rumors one way or the other. We heard first that the Steelers offered them $13 million last year per year, declined that, played on the $12.5 franchise tag. We're hearing that the Steelers have come all the way up to 15 this year, and obviously he hasn't accepted that. We also were hearing again that it was rumored that Le'Veon Bell was asking for at least $17 million per year, and none of this has been confirmed or denied by either party. If you listen to Le'Veon Bell's music, I know one of his songs, he's talking about how he wants to get paid, etc., etc. I can't recall whether or not he gave an actual number. Excuse me, guys. I can't recall if he gave an actual number, but I did hear him say something about how he wants to be paid, etc., etc. So then today, there's news coming out from Jeremy Fowler. A lot of you guys who follow the Steelers would know who that is. That is rumored that Le'Veon Bell says he won't take less than 14.5. Now, that's an interesting number, and I'll give you 2 reasons why. First reason would be, now it makes you feel like, did the Steelers offer him $13 million? Well, not 13, but did they offer him $15 million so far this year and during the offseason? If that was the case, it seems like if he's saying I won't take less than 14.5 per year, if they offered him 15 a year, seems like he would have took it. So I don't know how true either one of those stories are. Another reason why the 14.5 makes sense is because that is his current tag number. Any of you guys who watch football or have been following football for a long time, most of the time when these guys who are playing on the tag, when they get into that scenario where they're negotiating, a lot of times the beginning starting point is whatever their tag number is. Being that Le'Veon Bell will be earning 14.5 this year, makes a lot of sense that that would be his minimum, and it makes a lot of sense if that is the story. We don't know if he said that or not. Again, no disrespect to beat writers, and anybody who reports the news or trying to get information. A lot of it is speculation. A lot of it is from sources or what have you. These guys are looking for stuff to talk about. We don't know how true it is, but it would make sense. Now, if it is 14.5, there's actually ways that the Steelers can get that done. The question is, do you think they will? Do you think they value him at $14.5 million per year? That's an interesting number. I don't know. I don't know if they would value him at $17 million. I think if he's really asking for that, I don't expect the Steelers to do that. 14.5, I could see it. It's possible. Again, I don't know what Colbert and the rest of the brass in the Steelers organization is thinking as far as where their max is, but I could see possibly stretching it to 14.5. If you look at his production and the percentage of what he's meant to the production for the offense, I think it's pretty fair to say, yeah, you can see Le'Veon Bell feeling like he's worth at least that amount. If Antonio Brown is getting, what, 17, 18, something like that per year, I can see Le'Veon Bell saying, well, look, I'm not going to take less than 14.5. And again, if the Steelers can make it work, which, I've been looking at some of the things and I've been hearing from some other beat writers, particularly SteelersDepot.com, they could make it work at 14.5. Dave Bryant from Steelers Depot basically said that there's ways that they can make that work and it would be fair on both sides. If they can do it, great. Of course, I would love Le'Veon Bell, man. I would love to see him in a Steelers uniform for at least 3 more years. You got to make that contract to a point, again, where it's fair on both sides, where, let's say, after 3 years, he's not the same guy. The Steelers can get from underneath that contract with, with as minimal hit or dead money as possible. Meanwhile, giving Le'Veon Bell a good chunk of the money up front. If they can make it work, let's get it done. But we'll see. They have until July the 16th in order for that to happen. So we'll see. Now, Antonio Brown. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but let's face it. The Steelers, we've been unfortunate with having star players that seem like they want to say and do things at the wrong time. You guys know how I've said this about Ben Roethlisberger, and we can also say this about Antonio Brown. Even though Antonio Brown hasn't been as bad of an issue as, other players around the league, he's had small incidents. Last year, they're throwing the Gatorade bottle, which I know that's emotion, but again, you got to remember when they see somebody like that do it, they're going to make a story out of that. The Facebook Live post that he had, 2 seasons ago. Little stuff like that, man. And it's like, excuse me again, these type of things create narratives. So what did he say now? Some of you guys may be asking. Well, he basically did an interview after the minicamp. Minicamp started today. And he basically goes on a rant. He goes on a rant about the media. And what really kicked it off is about a week or so ago, he made a post on Instagram where he referenced, Bruce Arians and, kind of saying that Bruce Arians wasn't the best head coach. I think he said something like that. Or he basically was referencing the situation where Bruce Arians back in 2010 wanted to release Brown, didn't see the potential in him at the time. And look, guys can be wrong. We're talking about years ago. And he also referenced how Mike Tomlin said something to the effect of, two dogs, one bone. So it insinuated that there was friction between them, which it could very well have been. But once again, saying this stuff publicly, you should know this is going to create a narrative. Now the narrative is, does Antonio Brown have a problem with Mike Tomlin? And I know what some people are going to say, because people always want to blame Tomlin. People are going to say, see, he doesn't have a handle on his team, especially after the stuff Reggie Bush said, just a week or so ago. Excuse me, guys. But if you ask me, listen, man, I don't necessarily think that reflects on coaches. We've seen players in other organizations have some of the same lashing out. How Randy Moss used to act at certain times, and, Terrell Owens. And I don't necessarily think it was the coach's fault. I don't think that was Andy Reid's fault. What happened between, Owens and Donovan McNabb. It just it happens. I'm not going to go as far as blaming head coaches for every single thing, a player does. Or, people will say, he doesn't have that would never happen at so-and-so. I think, man, it just, things happen. And it just all comes down to who the player is and where he's playing at the time. I don't necessarily believe that there's a coach that there's, it absolutely nothing will ever happen. That's not true. There's not a coach in the league that hasn't had a player or some type of incident happen. It ain't necessarily the coach's fault. So just wanted to mention that, man. Look, I love Antonio Brown to death as much as I love Ben Roethlisberger to death. But let's face it, these guys sometimes do things or say things that draws attention to the team that's unwarranted and unnecessary. So, had to comment on that. Now, I want to talk about Jon Bostic a little bit, man. This is not breaking news or anything, but it's something to keep an eye on. Throughout the OTAs and, beginning minicamp today, Jon Bostic right now is not running with the number ones. Now, that is to be expected. You would think that the Steelers, the way they do things, they're going to go with who knows the system more to start out. Even Tomlin said today, man, he did a little press conference, or not really a press conference, but a little interview after the start of minicamp, and he basically said, listen, this point of the season, these are teaching things. These things have nothing to do with evaluation. He was saying you can see certain things from players that, intangibles, but we're not evaluating at this point. We don't start to evaluate until training camp and when pads come on and preseason, etc. So you would think, obviously, they're going to give Metakevich, as much opportunity as he can to earn his spot. But one would think that Jon Bostic is probably going to overtake Tyler Metakevich at some point. I mean, Bostic is not the best linebacker in the world, but if you go back and look at the season he had with the Colts, he stayed on the field. I think he led the team in tackles, or if he didn't lead them, he was right up there near the, close to being the leader. Good against the run, not bad in, against the pass, not great against the pass, but, how many middle linebackers are. But I think from what I've seen from his play, he's probably better than Tyler Matakevich, and I think you will see him overtake Matakevich at some point. However, let's say Dirty Red is getting it done. I'm not opposed to whoever is in that spot that can get it done. If Dirty Red can outplay Bostic, or if, let's say, Bostic and Dirty Red can, put Vince Williams on the bench, I don't care who's in the spot. We just need help. We need somebody to come in there and produce. So whoever's the one producing, I'm cool with. So doesn't matter to me who it is. Even if it's Matthew Thomas, that the long shot, undrafted free agent from Florida State. Whoever can come in there and help, I'm not opposed to any of that. But let's keep an eye on Jon Bostic, man, since he was acquired, to see whether or not he cracks the starting lineup at some point. You would think throughout training camp, into preseason, etc., etc. Let's keep our eyes on that. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about, man, Mike Hilton mentioned this, and I can't remember if I mentioned any of this at all last week or not, but Mike Hilton said something about he feels like the Steelers, could very well show some 7 DB personnel. He said it confidently. He was basically saying how we have guys that, can play in the box, play in the post or what have you, play inside, play slot, and guys that could tackle. And we all know that. He referenced guys like Edmonds and Allen. And by the way, speaking of Allen, he had a little amount of tweakage of his hamstring, something like that in OTAs. These little things happen early on, no significant injuries. But it's interesting to hear a guy on the defense saying that he feels like they have the capability and they may very well throw some personnel packages out there where it's 7 DBs. Listen, I'm not opposed to that at all, man. If these guys can make it happen, if they can tackle, in case somebody runs the football, if a guy like Burnett and Edmonds and Sean Davis, which you would think would be more box-filling guys, and again, Marcus Allen, I'm cool with that. And I would expect it would be a 4-down lineman, and it would be, I would imagine it would be Stephon Tuitt, Cam Hayward inside. Then on the outside, you have TJ Watt and Bud Dupree. That's what I would imagine that package would look like. I'm not opposed to it. Keep as much speed on the field as possible, and if guys can cover both pass and run, do what you got to do, man, to compensate for the loss of Ryan Shazier, as well as getting a little better with overall defense. Putting as many guys on the field that can cover as possible. Because even if they don't go 7 DBs and they do a normal dime package, one would have to believe that it's going to be a guy like Jon Bostic that would stay in the middle as the middle backer. Or even in that situation, they could have a situation where they bring Edmonds to play that spot, and then you still, or Allen, and then you can still have Edmonds in the back, Sean Davis, and Morgan Burnett. So you'll get a 3 safety look, and then you still can get your slot guy and your 2 corners on the outside. So it's going to be very interesting, man, to see how they're going to do it. But I thought it was very telling and just pretty interesting. A little bit of insight right there from Mike Hilton saying that he believes that the Steelers will throw out some 7 DB packages, believes they will and believe they can. So that's very interesting, man. And I'm liking the changes that we're hearing about. Of course, we're not seeing any type of schemes or anything like that yet. It's very early. Probably won't see any of that or any glimpse of that until training camp. For those who will travel up to Latrobe, I'm going to try to see if I can get out there one day this year. Possibly, maybe a Saturday or something. Never gone to a training camp. Of course, I've been to numerous games in Heinz Field, but I've never gone to practice. So I might try to see if I can ride up there. And I know my brother Tony is going to see this. Maybe, maybe one Saturday we can shoot up there and see what's good. Outside of that, I'm just very optimistic about the things I'm hearing, the little things that are surfacing. Will be interesting, man. It will be interesting to see what we put on display both offensively and defensively. Defensively, I think we can come out with a whole different look. I see a lot of people commenting on these videos. I'm sure somebody will do it again in this video, that they think the Steelers are gearing up to go 4-3. I don't know if I believe that. But I think we will see a very, very good mix of things. You know, I think we will be more of a multiple defense. We have been a little bit of a hybrid defense already, but I think you're going to see more of that. You know, I think you'll see more exotic personnels that are more of the base package. You know, like, you never know. It might be a situation where we're doing a lot of dime or a lot of 7 DBs. Who knows? I just think that the Steelers have something up their sleeve, and it's going to be interesting to see what we have to offer. And then on offense, it'll be interesting to see what type of things we do differently under Fichtner, how guys might be utilized. I would assume James Washington is going to be on the outside. I would assume he would be in Martavis Bryant's spot. I would love to keep Juju inside because I like that matchup better, even though he can play on the outside. But I'm just optimistic, man. You know, it's not a whole lot to know yet, but the closer we get, I mean, it's already June, it's already minicamp. Training camp will be starting a few weeks after that, so we're starting to get into the nitty-gritty. Outside of that, man, I read something before I started this video, and I apologize, guys, I didn't read the full details, but it says something about Morgan Burnett and Bud Dupree not being all the way healthy to start off with OTAs. Something to keep our eyes on. Let's keep our eyes on that. I don't think it's anything significant. They asked Tomlin about it in his interview, and he said, you know, nothing to write news about. But let's keep our eyes on it. Not too much with Morgan Burnett, but with Bud Dupree, excuse me, guys. I'm going to have to take a sip of this water. I was trying to keep it as professional as possible. Sorry about that. Sorry about the interruption. But, Bud Dupree is somebody we got to keep our eyes on. Y'all know the narrative, man. He hasn't been stud Dupree yet. In some instances, some people feel like he's been dud Dupree. I would like him to just be Bud Dupree, at least that. But I would love for him to be stud Dupree. But let's keep an eye on him, man, because it always seems like every time we hear about Bud Dupree not necessarily doing that much, it's always a lingering injury or something. So hopefully this is not anything significant. I would assume that it's not. It's very early, so it's probably a non-factor. But again, you got to pay attention to it since it is something that's being reported. Don't know how true it is or not or whatever, but that's all I got for this particular week, man. Happy to be back here in my home dwelling to bring you guys another video. Of course, you guys, if you saw the video last week, I was on vacation. My wife and I went down to Cabo. You know, Los Cabos, Mexico. Had a phenomenal time. And you know, if you care about it, you know, I'll be putting up a vlog pretty soon in regards to that, showing some shots and kind of reviewing my experience and what have you. But that's another video. But anyway, man, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Click those notifications on so you know when videos are available. And I promise, man, it will never hurt you to hit that like button. All right, so that's going to do it for this particular show. And we thank you for tuning in to another episode of Terrible Towel Tuesday. All right, guys, that's going to do it. We'll catch you next week. Peace.